It's Ivy Slater, and you're listening to Her Success Story podcast, a show where gutsy businesswomen share their success journey. Hello, and welcome to today's episode of Her Success Story. I am thrilled to bring you this guest. I've had a joy of getting to know her, and we bring you guests from all over the world, as you well know. Well, today I'm bringing you a guest, Sehgal, from almost around the corner in New York City. We think it's a big place, but it's not so big. We were connected through various people on a large scale, and I found out Anu lives in New York. We could have been meeting for coffee. Well, she has started an organization called the Culture Tree. The Culture Tree provides South Asian themed education and cultural programs that enrich the lives of children and their families and promotes a deeper connection with their roots and the worlds around them. The Culture Tree partners with museums, galleries, schools, libraries to implement various classes and programming. Their programming includes celebration of key festivals and events, puppet shows, bilingual story time, mindful eating, and a variety of other things. Anu, I'm so excited you're here with me. You have been featured in various places. Talk about finding a niche market. I've been fascinated as we've chatted about how you've built the Culture Tree and the impact it's making. So thank you for being here today.
Thank you so much for having me.
So how did this idea get started? Where did it come from? We always say, all of a sudden in the middle of the night, I realized this, that, and the other thing. But where did it start? Because it's not necessarily, it's your cultural background, but it's not your business background.
Exactly. And Ivy, we have talked about this, that I come from, I was in finance. I have worked in marketing and brand management. I think the real genesis for me for starting this organization was having my own kids. And, I am an immigrant. I moved to the US for my higher education, and then I ended up staying here. And I took a break from my culture for a little while when I was trying to assimilate and really get to know the culture and fit in. But once I had my own kids, I really thought having them understand their heritage culture, having them understand a language from their heritage culture is very critical for them to be confident, for them to be, just aware of where their parents and grandparents come from, because there are cultural nuances, just besides even the language and all the other factors. So I really wanted them to be confident and proud of their heritage. That was the first reason I started. I basically was, once I had my first son, I was taking him to various museums, libraries, events. And I really thought the way the South Asian culture was available for children in general, South Asian American kids or kids in general, was very limited. And it was, just very cookie cutter. And I wanted to change that. And talking about, business background, I saw that as a really big white space. So I thought.
So you saw there is a need, not just for you, but there's a need in the marketplace.
Exactly. That was a need. And I thought, let's go ahead and meet this need, because there's definitely, demand. And I started with language education. So I started with language classes. And, within a couple of weeks of my introducing language classes, I was inundated with requests from South Asian parents, not just Indian parents. So definitely there was a huge demand. And that basically led on its own organically to my starting cultural programming. And museums connecting with me, because the parents who had their kids enrolled in my program, in my language program, said, can you work with so-and-so museum? Here is the contact. We love what you're doing. We love it the way you're doing it. And we love the way you're representing the culture for our kids, but we want to broaden it.
So it's very often we think about, are we listening to our clients? Are we listening to our customers? And what I'm hearing you say is it was listening to your client base, your customers who saying, we're ready for more. And they're handing you over on silver platters, the connections. It's like, and here's the people we know who could help you.
Right.
So did you have a vision in the early years of the culture tree of where it is today, or it has been a consistent evolution and a surprise along the way?
So no, it has been quite an evolution. When I initially started the company, I had a very specific vision because I wanted my kids to go to a center on a Sunday. Like I wanted them to have their Sunday school of really experiencing their culture through various ways, whether it's language, whether it's dance, whether it's music. And I really specifically wanted a location where all Indians, at that time it was not South Asia, it was just focused on India, all Indians in the New York area could come and experience their culture in a very authentic way. And the way, it is back home. So initially it was a very specific idea, but of course, New York City having space and real estate is very cost prohibitive.
Right.
It really has to make sense to have a location, a physical location. And we initially had that idea. We started doing classes, and then we were doing language classes in various schools. And then it really panned out to be us going to various clients and meeting their needs. But then during pandemic,
this was interesting because so now the world shuts down, so you're going places, but now you can't go places, and a lot of businesses said, okay, so how could we re-envision our vision?
Yeah.
And some just continued to do wonderfully. You guys were one of those exceptions that you skyrocketed.
We skyrocketed. Like we evolved very quickly. We were having in-person classes. We had around 15 language classes going on in the New York area, whether it's Brooklyn, Manhattan was a main center, and then different schools also. And we had people coming from New Jersey, from neighborhood areas. However, the quarantine, the week it started, we quickly moved to Zoom as the main focus and the main application that we were using. And just word of mouth, we got so many enrollments. I had to very quickly train my staff, my teachers. I had to hire more teachers.
Right.
And from a very local organization, we became national very quickly. We even had enrollments from Australia, from UK. So it became a global organization. And, that was a big challenge for me. I was always thinking, okay, we have nailed it in the New York area. How do we expand? How do we expand? Is it licensing? Is it, some other model? But it just was definitely a really, really big moment for our organization to expand. And we expanded and we met the demand, and we had to evolve very quickly and, just take advantage of what opportunities we had.
So, Anu, what has surprised you in building this organization? I'm sure there's been many, but what stands out for you?
The most surprising element for me has been the need. It's basically when I started, it was, an immigrant mom's desire to have her kids know the heritage and the culture. Right. And I thought it was a very personal thing. I thought not other Indian American or Indian immigrant parents had the same need. But it was a big surprise because everyone was going through the same feeling, same need, same desire. And, once we started talking to other parents, once we had kids enrolled, I realized that it's a very unanimous, very universal feeling. The other surprising element was once I started working with museums, and specifically, initially, I worked with children's museums in the tri-state area. Once I started working with them, I realized they also wanted to do more representing a specific culture than they had been doing. Because, it was the same things. Like, and this happens with a lot of different countries, programs and cultures, that it's the same thing that people keep doing over and over and
right.
over.
Once you figure something out, you do the same thing over and over and over until it becomes stale.
Exactly. Until it becomes stale, or until, something like this pandemic happens, when we are united with the rest of the world in our suffering, in our pain, and in our knowledge. Like, I just feel the pandemic has given us so much ease with which we can connect with people. The technology is just, there's so much technology available. And then I just feel people are also in general realizing that, cultural representation has to be authentic, has to be below the surface. It can't be the same thing over and over again. It has to go beyond that. And the best way to do it is engage people from different cultures and countries to do that, because the authenticity is going to be unparalleled.
So, where do you see, because it has exploded beyond your wildest imagination in since the pandemic, in the last year and a half plus or whatever, how do you then now go to look forward in building the next level of a business plan, a business vision? Or, you mentioned Australia, you mentioned England. Is it bigger? Is it broader than that? Is it, certain cities? Where are you seeing this for you?
So there are definitely two pillars. One is the language education that we do, and we focus on different languages. Right now, initially, we just had two language focus, which was Hindi and Urdu, which are very well known, very high demand languages. So this fall, we have expanded to two more languages from South Asia. And again, our model is very demand based. So it's Gujarati and Punjabi, which are, again, two languages that are in demand in the US based on, the Indian or the South Asian immigrants here. The second pillar that we have is cultural education. And for that, what I have started doing, and this is again related to the pandemic, initially it was very in-person oriented programs that we did. So it was limited to, the talent that is available here. But since pandemic happened and our programs moved to a virtual format, whether it was, with the Met, Asia Society, New York Public Library, who are all our clients, the level of, the resources and the people available to us was just, sky was the limit. We did a program for Eid, the Muslim festival. And in that, we actually had different components. And, one of the components was a book reading by an author. And actually, the author came and did the book reading. We had a calligraphy segment in which a master calligrapher from Iraq did a whole virtual segment. We are currently doing a program in which this amazing journalist and author from India, Rupa Pai, has been teaching children and their families about the ancient Indian epics. And she does it in a very contemporary format, and she makes it relatable to our current, political scenario, things that are happening around us. So these people, like, I couldn't have even imagined to have these people teach and make us experience. I am learning, Ivy. I am learning so much more about my culture because I'm talking to these people on an everyday basis.
Right. And it's so interesting because I every generation down,
Yeah.
We lose a little bit, and then all of a sudden we become adults and I say, I wish I had access to my grandparents now as an adult to ask them questions. And, I could hear my grandfather talking to me. He's like, yeah, but if you actually spoke to my parents and you really would have known. So to actually gain this knowledge, how is it affecting the children and their parents? Because that's one of the things that's coming to my mind of seeing this light through your children.
Right, right. So no, I see it firsthand. I have two boys and they have been in my language program, whether they had phases when they were like, oh, we don't want to do it, but they had to learn the language. That there was just no questions about it and there was no option for them. So my 12-year-old, who has been learning Hindi since he was 4, he is now fluent. He can read, he can write. He is, Ivy, so interested in the culture. He wrote, there was a very well-known play on Eid that was written by Munshi Premchand, who is a very well-known award-winning author from 1940s. So my son read his play in Hindi, and he basically wrote his version, reinterpreted it, wrote his version, and he wrote it so beautifully. So, I see it firsthand, but I also see it through students. I have seen it through children, whether they are South Asian or not. I see the impact. I feel the impact. There is so much that is not known about the region of South Asia or India. Like, my initial feeling was that people just thought all Indians are the same way. They're all one person. But no, it's a very diverse country. And there are so many aspects that people can learn. So I definitely see such a big difference. And that is what keeps me going on an everyday basis. When I see these kids that are interested in their heritage, I see these kids that are learning about a different culture and relating it to their own upbringing. I see how it builds empathy, how it builds, respect for each other and all the cultures around them. So it is definitely like, I have worked in corporate scenario. This is so rewarding. I've done product launches, stellar product launches, but this is just unparalleled feeling.
And it's probably incredibly interesting to just sit in the background and listen to the kids share amongst themselves and see the impact it's making.
Say that again?
I said it must be so interesting sometimes, or I don't even know if there's an opportunity to sit in the background and hear the dialogue amongst the so to speak, those kids in the playground of what the impact it is on them.
Yeah. Yeah.
So what would you, thoughts, tips, advice for other leaders who are thinking about getting something started? Other people who, might have been put off by the pandemic as opposed to stepped into the pandemic.
Right.
What would you share with them?
So in general, my advice would be, firstly, just as an entrepreneur, I would say pick something that you are extremely passionate about. Meet a need. Don't get into something that's already saturated, because it will be frustrating unless and until your idea is really, really unique. So I think those are the two very, very critical things. And then I feel that the third thing is, once you get started, find a force that will push you to keep moving forward. That is very critical. And that force can be anyone. In my case, I think it was the parents initially, who really thought that our company was doing something groundbreaking and really revolutionary. It can be anyone. It can be your parents. It can be your spouse. But find a force that will keep pushing you forward, because as an entrepreneur, you can be very isolated. You can feel, that you are alone. But you just have to have that force that keeps pushing you forward.
I love that. Anu, how could our listeners continue to learn more about you and stay connected to you?
The best way to stay connected with us is on Instagram and LinkedIn. On Instagram, we are The Culture Tree. Please do not forget and it's the same on LinkedIn. And then you can also go to our website. It's theculturetree.com. And just follow us, spread the word, spread the word about our organization. Ivy, as you mentioned, we are doing so much programming. We are also, for the first time, doing puppet shows that are
fun.
South Asia, which has never been done in the US. I mean, I've not seen anything. So definitely spread the word and help us, get everyone to know South Asia a little more, whether it's South Asians or not.
And thank you so much for joining me here today on Her Success Story. Listeners, what I will always say is hit subscribe. We come into your inbox every Monday morning with interesting and different interviews, as well as content on being great leaders in business from today and onward. Also, take a moment and think about what your biggest takeaway was today from listening to Anu. Take a moment, think about that, and then put in what you're going to do. What is the action you're going to take from listening today? Thank you always for joining us to listen. We are always all about taking those actions. See you next time on Her Success Story.